Let's start today by looking at this article from the LA Times titled "The Wealthiest Californians Are Fleeing the States. Why That's Very Bad News for the Economy."
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs!
Now I'm over here wondering, whoa, what happened to all this talk I've seen since at least 2018? We're going on almost 6 years of this talking point I've seen multiple times over the years, especially from California's current governor, goofy-ass Gavin Newsom. About California, fourth largest economy in the world, all these other smoke and mirrors, most IPOs, most venture capital, all of that fun stuff, most tech startups and all that wonderful stuff. See, are Democratic economic policies really that bad as Republicans and conservatives say? Aren't Democrat economic policies, aren't they just working wonders in places like California? Well, now we're getting articles from the LA Times. The LA Times, which is not exactly Fox News. You know, recently, California Governor Gavin Newsom, he debated Ron DeSantis a couple weeks ago on Fox News, on Sean Hannity. And I think, and I'm no big fan of Ron DeSantis, there's a lot I don't like about the guy, but when it came to the issue of economics and which state, which governor has been better for economics, like taxes and jobs and businesses and residents fleeing the states, I thought that Ron DeSantis crushed Gavin Newsom on that front. And I remember after watching that debate, a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of Democrats and their cheerleaders were saying how unfair it was because it was on Fox News, it was on Sean Hannity, and they were being unfair, they were being biased. It was unfair to Gavin Newsom, the way they were framing questions and framing the debate. Well, now we have the LA Times, which is not exactly Fox News. I don't think it's unfair to say that the LA Times leans a little bit to the left, politically speaking. Even they're talking about how California is not doing so great as of late. This was written by Don Lee on December 19th, 2023. Even though California has experienced lopsided out-migration for decades, the financial blow has been cushioned by the kinds of people moving into the states. The newcomers were generally better educated and earned more money than those who left. Not now. That long-standing trend has reversed. New state-to-state migration data show that for several years, thousands more high-earning, well-educated workers have left California than have moved in. The reversal, largely in response to the state's high taxes and soaring cost of living, has begun to damage California's overall economy, and by cutting into tax revenues, has delivered punishing blows to states and local governments. State budget analysts recently projected a record $68 billion deficit in the next fiscal year because of a 25% drop in personal income tax collection in 2023. Some city, county, and other local taxing authorities, particularly in the San Francisco Bay Area, have also recorded record revenue declines. Now, a few things on this front. First off, does anybody remember, I think it was about a year ago, maybe longer than that, but does anybody remember when Democrats in California were talking about maybe passing a single-payer healthcare program in the state of California? And then Democrats, including Gavin Newsom, decided not to, in which a lot of the socialist and populist asshats on the left got all bent out of shape, including Crystal Ball over at Breaking Points and a whole segment about it, essentially accusing Democrats in California and Gavin Newsom of being bribed out of passing social payer healthcare system in California because the big greedy insurance companies didn't want it. And maybe there's truth to that. I don't know, although my impression, and I'm not one to defend Democrats, but my impression was that the Democrats in California probably recognized that the state could not afford a single-payer healthcare program. Even during a year where they had a $95 billion tax revenue surplus. And that's a whole other thing, is I'm old enough to remember, including during the first few years of Governor Gavin Newsom, every time there was a surplus, a tax revenue surplus in California to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, or one year, if I recall correctly, $95 billion in revenue surplus. A lot of people are like, whoa, this is great. See, Democrat economic policies, don't they work wonderful? Because the single-payer healthcare program would have cost an additional $400 billion a year in annual revenue, and the bill that was being discussed in the California state legislature was counting on the federal government kicking in about $200 billion for that revenue. Now, this did not stop the socialist and populist asshats from getting bent out of shape over it. I often see Kyle Kalinski's Secular Talk. I did a whole video about this. He likes to mockingly ask, how are you going to pay for it? As if passing a generous wealth redistribution program and asking how you're going to pay for it is not a legitimate concern. Well, if California passed a single-payer healthcare program, I guess now they would not be paying for it because they are experiencing massive tax revenue deficits. And judging by this article on the LA Times, it looks like taxing the rich, making the rich pay their fair share, whatever the hell that means, it looks like that's not going to solve this revenue problem. With investors and high-income taxpayers receiving substantial compensation in the form of stocks, last year's sluggish stock market accounted for a major share of the decline in state income tax revenues. So did layoffs and financial weakness in the tech sector. But rising unemployment in the state and the growing flight of professionals, business operators, and others making good salaries were also notable contributors. Remember this next time some asshat like Robert Reich or President Joe Biden talks as if business professionals, business leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, as if they're not responsible for creating wealth and for the economic growth. And those factors will be harder to reverse, at least in the foreseeable future.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs!
There is a price to pay for the movement of middle and upper income people and corporations, said Joel Kotkin, a fellow at Chapman University who has researched the flight from California and the resulting threat to the state's financial outlook. People who are leaving are taking their tax dollars with them. The accelerating exodus from California in recent years of both companies and people has been well documented. The pandemic-induced rise in remote work, inflated housing prices, and changing social conditions has spurred more Californians to pull up the stakes. Last year, Soo Jin Yang moved herself and her designer eyelash business from Oakland to Las Vegas. It turns out it's not just the Athletics and the Raiders that are moving from Oakland to Las Vegas. Yang, 45, was born, grew up, and went to college in the East Bay, but she said she no longer felt safe operating her company in downtown Oakland. She also wanted an easier place to do business. Nevada has fewer regulations and no personal income tax. Now, isn't this rich? Rising unemployment, layoffs, businesses leaving the state of California. I put up a video, I think I put it up earlier this year, where I reacted to Gavin Newsom, where he was talking about how wonderful the California economy is. And at one point he mentioned how California leads the country in venture capital investment and corporate IPOs and tech startups and all of that fun, wonderful stuff. And I remember at the time saying that this sounds a little bit like trickle-down economics. Woo! Yeah, it turns out when people have a lot more money, especially rich people, they often seek to put that money to work, hoping to get long-term gains. One way people do this is by investing in new businesses, new technology, which results in wealth creation, new businesses, new technology, and products for consumers to enjoy, more jobs and opportunities.
We're number one in the Bloomberg Index of innovation and entrepreneurialism. We dominated yet again in venture capital. And that's not just for fancy folks in Silicon Valley. That's pushing out the boundary to discovery and opportunity, innovation that advantages each and every one of us. 53% the nation's venture capital. Over 100 damn IPOs year to date in this state. $80+ billion budget surplus. 80+ billion, not that 76 billion. We had another $3.9 billion in new cash.
Even more reason to cut taxes on the rich. The private sector tends to allocate capital much better than politicians do. And now we're seeing the opposite happen. We're seeing people flee California because of their high taxes and high regulations to states that have no personal income tax. And while we're talking about trickle-down economics, there's also this issue of the Laffer curve and Reaganomics. They're often lumped in together. A lot of people on the left, a lot of Democrats have often laughed these ideas off. The Laffer curve, Reaganomics, trickle-down economics. Dave Pakman did a segment on the Laffer curve years ago, although I think he had a more nuanced take than most people do, at least from the left. And I'm not one to hinge my politics and my views on economics on Ronald Reagan or the Laffer curve or trickle-down economics. My standard is freedom and individual rights, but I've often thought it's insane that people on the left just dismiss this all. And I imagine that Art Laffer is laughing his ass off right now because we're seeing in real time a state like California losing tax revenue because their tax rates are so high. Way to go, guys.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
Anyway, article goes on to say, definitely the tax breaks, more affordable wages, said Yang, who founded her beauty firm Illumino in 2007 and now has 6 employees, one of whom moved with her from California to Nevada. Yeah, we're seeing, partly because of high taxes, people leaving California and California missing out on that sweet tax revenue. In 2021 and 2022, about 750,000 more people left the state than moved in, according to recently released Census Bureau data. That was about as many as the total net loss of residents for all 5 years before the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020. But it's not just the sheer numbers of people who have left. What's different is that in each of the prior 2 years, more than 250,000 Californians with at least a bachelor's degree moved out, while an average of 175,000 college graduates from other states settled in California, according to an analysis from census data by William Frey, a demographer at the Brookings Institution. In prior periods over the last 2 decades, that balance was about even or slightly in California's favor, even though the state consistently lost many more residents overall to other states than it gained from them. The recent out-migration has been particularly pronounced among Californians with graduate and professional degrees. California is heavily dependent on high earners to meet government fiscal needs. Tax filers in the top 1% of income earning around $1 million and above have typically accounted for 40 to 50% of the state's total personal income tax revenue, said Brian Euler, deputy legislative analyst at California's Legislative Analyst's Office, which estimated the $68 billion deficit. Yeah, again, so remember this next time some asshat like Robert Reich or Joe Biden or Gavin Newsom or the who's who of socialist and populist asshats on the left tell you that the rich don't pay their fair share, whatever the hell that means. But it's not just the super rich, such as Elon Musk, who moved from California to Texas in 2020 and brought his company Tesla with him a year later. or movie star Mark Wahlberg, who left Los Angeles for Vegas last year. And I think another part with Los Angeles is I think they recently imposed what is called a millionaire's tax on property and houses that get sold. I think it's something like any property over that gets sold for over $5 million, they get to pay a new tax or whatever. And so a lot of rich celebrities just started selling their property before that tax kicked in. There's been a broader exodus of ordinary Californians in the upper income spectrum as well. In the tax filing years of 2020 and 2021, the average gross income of taxpayers who had moved from California to another state was about $137,000. That was up from $75,000 in 2015 and 2016, according to migration and personal income data from the Internal Revenue Service. So yeah, it's not just the millionaires and billionaires. A lot of middle income, upper middle income people in California are also fleeing the states. And again, relatively speaking, these are rather high incomes when compared to other states, $137,000. I imagine that accounts for a lot of tax revenue. IRS and other data show that Texas has long been by far the top destination for Californians. And in the years 2015 to 2016, an individual or couple who had moved from California to Texas reported an average income of $78,000, about the same as Texans who relocated to California. But by 2020 to 2021, California transplants in Texas reported an average income of $137,000, while tax returns from former Texans who moved to California showed an average income of $75,000. The income gap between those coming into California and those going out is even bigger when it comes to Florida, which, as far away as it is, has become a top 5 destination for immigrating Californians. Statistics show more older Californians are likely to move there. Florida, like Texas and Nevada and Tennessee, another more recent hotspot for Californians, does not have a personal income tax. So we have California that imposes high progressive taxes on incomes. And then we have all these states that have zero income taxes. And if you recall the debate between DeSantis and Newsom tried to make it sound like that poorer and working class people in Florida pay a higher tax rate than high income earners in California. And I wonder how he grapples with this fact. The fact that many of his residents who have been responsible for the massive tax revenues in California, well, now they're fleeing to states that are governed by people like Ron DeSantis. In California, the top tax rate for personal income is 12.3%. They're saying, hey, I'm working hard and the income tax is just killing me, said Todd Littman, a longtime estate planning attorney in Tustin. These days, Littman says he's hearing from 4 or 5 clients every month who want to leave California, up from just 1 a month a few years ago. Many of his clients have $1 million or more in their retirement accounts, he said, and they don't want the extra tax burden when they make withdrawals. But remember, guys, 4th largest economy. And then here we get the 2017 tax reform by President Trump and how this spurred moves because it capped the SALT deduction. I guess they're trying to blame Trump for some of this. And yeah, maybe there's some truth to this, but you know what might help prevent this is if you lowered your damn taxes. And then they talk about housing prices in California, an issue that I've talked about a lot over the years. I guess it's up to, the median house price in California is up to $840,000 these days. I think last time I checked a year or two ago, it was around $700,000. It's up 46% from the start of 2020, according to the California Association of Realtors. And then they also talk about how maybe remote working has contributed to this. Eric McGee, a senior fellow at the Public Policy Institute of California who has written about demographic trends and migration, thinks that the increased loss of higher educated Californians to other states in recent years can be traced in significant part to the rise of remote work since the pandemic. Maybe there's some truth to that as well. Although the number of people leaving the state is small as a share of California's overall population of about 39 million, McGee said, it's a significant issue because the numbers add up over time. What's more, with the pandemic and immigration restrictions imposed by Washington, California has not had the same stream of new arrivals from foreign countries, many from Asia with advanced degrees, as it had in the past to backfill the negative domestic migration. Even if the outflow of residents reverts to pre-pandemic levels, the broader economic climate does not bode well for the state's budget and economic outlook, at least in the immediate future. The U.S. economy is slowing, and California's economy is decelerating faster than the nation's.
Oh, spaghetti-o!
With the state's unemployment rate, mostly recently at 4.8%, already a full point higher than nationwide. And keep in mind, some of Gavin Newsom's policies have not even come into fruition yet. Notably, this new fast food law that creates some bureau to give workers a seat at the table. And when it starts, it's going to give fast food employees throughout the entire state, I think, a $20 or something minimum wage. And many of the franchisees who are technically small mom and pops, when I first read about this issue, they said, this is going to be hard on us. We're going to have to raise prices to meet these increased labor costs, which is going to be bad for the consumers. Or it means they're going to be hiring less people. Might mean that they might go out of business, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how well that works out. California is more dependent on interest-sensitive sectors such as real estate and high tech, especially startups. Silicon Valley emerged from the pandemic awash in venture capital money with a burst of investments, but sharply rising interest rates beginning in the spring of 2022 pummeled tech stocks and new investments, causing layoffs and shrinking capital gains taxes. Sales tax revenue in California has also dried up despite higher prices from inflation. For now, the Legislative Analyst Office is projecting a small improvement in income tax revenue over the next 2 years, but that's cold comfort for policymakers and economists. California has $24 billion in rainy day general funds, less than half of what's needed to cover the expected shortfall. It's probably going to be some combination of cutting back spending and raising taxes, Sung-Hwan Sun, an economics professor at Loyola Marymount University, said of the likely response to the budget crisis. But if we keep raising taxes, he said, we'll keep chasing people away from the state. And yes, this is what I've been saying for years, especially every time I see Democrats and their cheerleaders spike the football on California's booming economy. Maybe it's the case that the California economy was large and flourishing in spite of Democrat economic policies and not because of them. If California embraced free market economic policies and principles, it would probably be an even larger economy today than it is, and people would be tripping over themselves to move to California as opposed to running from California.